My lords, the Grand Archive is coming on October 29th. We have known since the release of the Season Pass alongside the Machine Age announcement that Q4 would herald a new Story Pack DLC for Stellaris, and today we get our first sneak peek at what's coming with the Grand Archive. In this report I'll cover all the new features that have been teased for the Grand Archive, ranging from the new MegaStructure itself to the 240 specimens that we can capture, breed and cultivate, new relics, tradition trees, origins, civics, new spaceborne life forms, a new mid-game crisis, events, anomalies, dig sites and more. Let's get into it. And we'll start with what we know about the new MegaStructure, the Grand Archive itself. As we can see from the image teased in the trailer, is a brand new megastructure that will allow us to store specimens that we collect from across the galaxy. This appears to be done via a separate collection tab next to where Relics is currently situated, and is further subcategorized into aesthetic wonders, galactic history, and xenogeology. I do wonder if one of the origins will be able to build this megastructure from the start, or if we must wait to unlock mega engineering first. Looking at the image, we can see that each of these items collected gives a minor buff, and has a rating, a date found, a sell value, and some lore attached. Using the example given, spiraling attraction is of common quality and buffs planetary build speed by 15%. It looks like you have the option to sell the item for 750 energy credits, and a nice touch is the date that you find it and the event that it was tied to. I suspect, given that we have 240 different specimens to find, that this will be absolutely massive for the lore of the game. If every specimen has a similar description, and we know from past experiences that the developers like to hide little tidbits of information in these text descriptions, Warform's psionic capabilities is a great example of this, then I suspect that we may gain a huge number of new insights regarding the history and lore of our universe. We can also see the inclusion of a Vivarium tab. For those of you who don't know, a Vivarium is essentially a large tank for observation or study of animals, a little bit like an aquarium. I can only guess based on what they have told us about breeding space fauna and the introduction of the new variants, but this is probably the tab that will be able to do this. The image shows the Vivarium tab in more detail. From the list we can see a breakdown of Tianqi space whales of various qualities. It seems to me that they are producing food. I also wonder what the variants and qualities represent. For example, what is better about an exceptional or epic Tianqi versus a common one? Will an exceptional Tianqi produce more food, or are they more capable in fleet combat? I'm sure we'll find out. It does appear that we can clone and breed the space fauna to use in galactic conflicts. Producing fleets of Tianqi to fight alongside our battleships and cruisers will be quite exciting, but I do wonder how capable they'll be in combat, and quite what weaponry and armour we can outfit them with. Perhaps they'll have their own class of organic weapon systems which we can upgrade as our tech increases. If not, I've always thought it would be enjoyable to strap a mega cannon to Bubbles and send her on her way. To further pursue this, imagine what a Tianqi in an exoskeleton with an arc emitter would look like. It could be quite entertaining. According to the dev diary, contained within your Grand Archive, the Vivarium is a controlled environment where wild space fauna can be cared for and studied. Space fauna in captivity will grow faster and breed more easily than in the wild. These creatures can then be dissected for research, resource, or their genetic material. With the development of the controlled mutations technology, space fauna can be customized to form a fleet, which will grow and become stronger over time. This is quite an interesting point, particularly the one regarding genetic material. I wonder if this is setting the groundwork for a future biological ascension rework. Furthermore, it looks like we will have deeper choices on how we choose to interact with the galactic space fauna. I suspect that the Galcon powers may be upgraded to punish those that abuse our space creature friends. And finally, on the space fauna, to capture them, it looks like we have some new technologies to do so. The gravity snare looks to be some sort of kilo structure. I suspect that we simply build it in a system and wait to ensnare something exciting. But I wonder what the limitations are. Could we ensnare any of the Leviathans, the Ether Drake or the Matriarch for example? I'm sure that time will tell. Grand Archive also brings with it a new mid-game crisis event. The population of voidworms in the galaxy has reached a critical mass. Their behaviour is noticeably changing, and the typical stage of their life cycle, where host populations would be spared, has been disrupted. There seems to be no further regard for the sustainability of their spawning grounds. All our colonies are on red alert. The presence of the voidworms in any system should be met with extreme caution. A breeding frenzy on a galactic scale is upon us. So we know that voidworms are one of two new species of space fauna that we are going to get to play with. The second being Cthulhuids, which I'll get to shortly, and forgive me if I'm butchering that word, I've literally never heard it spoken before. Voidworms are a more active parasitic threat, with a full life cycle that can grow into a mid-game crisis if their population is left to breed. Culling and dissecting these creatures will allow the harvesting of their genetic material for cloning purposes, as well as other resource. So it would seem that voidworms will act as a sort of slow burn crisis. If ignored, they'll become a problem, but perhaps we can keep them in check and cull the species as required. This feels to me a little bit like a stronger version of the ancient mining machinery that we come across in the galaxy. I'm sure the more experienced players will have noticed that if you leave these alone, they will continue to expand and replicate, and become more of a problem. Cthulhuids are the second new species type that are being introduced, and given that Cthulhuids is a brand new word, I can only assume that these creatures are going to be somewhat in honour of the big bad himself, Cthulhu. Cthulhu, for those who aren't aware, is a great old one, a cosmic entity created by H.P. Lovecraft himself, and is one of the pantheon of Lovecraftian cosmic entities. We have no images of Cthulhuids that I've seen as of yet, but I cannot wait to see what they look like and learn about their origins. The only thing that we do know about them is that they are ambush predators that lurk within asteroid belts waiting for prey. I have high hopes for the lore implications on these. Speaking of their origins, the Grand Archive is giving us two new origins, dubbed Primal Calling and Treasure Hunters. We haven't been given the details on these two new origins as of yet, but I suspect that Primal Calling will be something to do with the coexistence between us and space fauna. I'm feeling a cultivation, production, and generally positive vibes from this origin. Treasure Hunters, on the other hand, is likely to be a new favourite for me. I assume it to be an empire obsessed with the history and wonders of the galaxy. They hope to gather all of the stuff and store it within their Grand Archive. If ever there was a time to roleplay as a Victorian Britain, this is it. The tea drinkers among us unite. We are also getting two new Civics, although it looks like there'll be a similar variant of the Civic available for each of the biological hive of machine empires. The new Civics are called Beastmasters and Galactic Curators. One assumes that they will have similar but lesser themes as the origins I just discussed. Treasure Hunters combined with Galactic Curators already sounds right up my street. Next is the two new tradition trees, Archivism and Domestication. Given the names, I'd assume that Archivism is to be related to the collection, documentation and storage of artifacts, likely giving us increases to the bonuses our artifacts provide, or perhaps making the chance of finding artifacts more likely. Domestication is likely to be related to the new space fauna mechanics. I would guess it would improve our ability to breed and produce space fauna, and perhaps make the produced fauna stronger or faster. In my mind I'm thinking superiority, but for space fauna. Finally, we have been told that we are also getting 15 new relics added with Grand Archive. This is a mind-boggling amount of new relics, and I wonder where they're all going to come from. In theory, this means as a minimum we'll also get 15 new dig sites and/or anomalies, but given the relics generally come from more detailed stories, my guess would be that there'll be dig sites. Perhaps some of the new space fauna will give up something as well, or perhaps they've added some relics to some of the older events. Given what we know so far, I have really high hopes for Grand Archive. As I've said elsewhere, story packs are my favourite category of downloadable content. They fill out the galaxy, and they make it feel more homely, but an exciting place. I look forward to bringing you all the new lore and stories that come with it. But what are you most looking forward to in Grand Archive? Please let me know in the comments, and if you want to hear more from me, perhaps about my thoughts on what 2025 should look like for Stellaris, then please click the video on screen now.